All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us to our first ever Featured Employer Friday. Today we have News Story Charity with us. And just so everybody's a little bit familiar, we are pivoting away from career fairs at the moment just because of the pandemic. And we figured this would be the best way to give attention to each employer. And I have been very intrigued about News Story. And we have two representatives with us today. We've got Brannon, and then we have Muriel Vega. My name is Nicole. I am with the Office of Career Development. I'm the Employer Relations Manager here, so this is what I do. But yeah, so if Annie and Muriel, if you guys can introduce yourselves, tell us what you do at News Story, and then if you guys can go ahead and just like dive right into what News Story is all about.
Yeah, so I'm Brannon. I am the director of our brand department. I came on, gosh, it's almost been 3 years, which is crazy. And as when I started, I was a copywriter. I was just kind of helping build donor relationships. And as that grew, we grew a department, and I sort of was the first in line to be able to manage it, which is honestly dream job for me. I get to manage our creatives and develop their skills, help them develop their skills really, and kind of creatively brainstorm every way that people interact with News Story in the world. So events in a former life that was not COVID-19, but then also all of our social media, all of our donor experiences that we create, donor brands. So yeah, it's been a really fun experience, and that's me.
And my name is Muriel Vega. I'm Partner Success Associate here at News Story. I'm about to hit a year in like 2 weeks or something, which is crazy. I feel like I've been here forever, and it also feels like yesterday. So I'm in charge of support and communications for all of our customers. We have 2 software tools that we created internally and that we saw a lot of demand for outside of News Story. So that's our data collection tool, Felix, and our donor platform, Donor Secure. So I hope everybody just kind of successfully use it and make sure that they're capturing as much data as possible so they can make informed decisions. And of course, you need money for that. So that's sort of connected to our Donor Secure platform as well, to help them increase all of their donations for the donors, so they can do more things with that data and create more projects.
Awesome.
So you can tell from listening that News Story is not your typical nonprofit. We have people who work in customer support for tech tools, which is not probably what you hear from most nonprofits. So our sort of thesis statement is we pioneer solutions to end global homelessness, which means that we started as an organization that built homes for people. And what we've developed into that particular business model for us was really all we did for the first, I would say, 3 years. So right as I joined News Story's team, they were starting to think about how we could expand our impact. And that doesn't mean that we stopped building homes. We still build homes, and we work on a 100% model, which means if you donated to News Story today, 100% of what you donate would go straight to building a home. There would be no, overhead taken out of that donation. So that was where we started, and we still have that core business. But we recognized quickly that what we were doing, the solution would never catch up to the need. There are billions of people who don't have homes, or a little over a billion, 1.6 billion people who don't have homes in the world right now. And that number is expected to rise to over 3 billion in the coming decades. And it's just going faster than we can catch up to it by building with traditional construction. So what we decided to do, not as a pivot, but as an addition to our core operations, is start finding more solutions. So we are building apps to help housing organizations work faster and better. We are developing ways of building faster, better, and cheaper. And we have a whole research team constantly working on finding better solutions and looking into ways that we can experiment with making housing faster and better and cheaper. One that you may have seen if you've seen us at all in the news is 3D printing. So we did 3D print the first permitted house in the US. That was way back in 2018, I think, when I joined. And then we are currently building the first community of 3D printed homes in the world, which is located in a rural, semi-rural location in Mexico. And it is going super well. We have do you know how many homes we have built at this point in time, Muriel?
I believe it's almost 20.
Yeah, so it's a mixed community of, like, there are traditional build homes, there are 3D printed homes. We're calling it our innovation village. We're testing out a lot of different ways of improving homes there. And those homes, like all of our homes, will go to real families who have had input in the way that they're constructed. So we work on a human-centered model that anybody who gets a home also gets to contribute to the way that that home is built. So is that a sufficient explanation, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely. And I also wanted to know, like, how the two of you guys came to your roles at New Story, and if you could provide some insight to like what your career journey was to get to New Story, that would be really great.
I feel like Muriel should go first because hers is such a great leap that I think it's fun to hear about.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I'm actually a journalist by trade. I went to Georgia State, majored in journalism and English, and I was pretty much a journalist since like 2009 till literally last year. However, for the last 4 years, I worked for a local publication in Atlanta called Hippopotamus, that it's fully VC funded, and we cover, they cover tech startups and all kinds of resources within the Southeast. Just to kind of highlight the fact that like things are happening here, like New Story. So I got to talk to so many startups and really find out how their products worked, how they really thought about them, how they came up with their ideas, what were the challenges. And honestly, I just kind of wanted to bring it all together because I wanted to just kind of like dive into that. It's so interesting, like the parameters people think when they're building a product, and when you're thinking about user behavior and selecting features and why this and not that. So that sort of all kind of funneled into my position now, New Story, where I literally do that. Like I handle a lot of our feature projects with Felix, which is our data collection tool. And now we're ramping up all of our work with Donor Secure and kind of building that infrastructure. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I still write a ton within New Story and outside of it. But I think that when you think about your skills, which for me, if you think about all the places that I worked at, which goes from a university to a church to an actual publication. Like in the end, my goal is to really optimize the way that like the business is talking to their customers. So if you're thinking about like how everything connects, that's sort of like what my goal is in my career. And that may look different ways. Like right now it's customer support. And other times it might just be an actual article in a publication. You're always just trying to communicate more things.
It's really cool. I didn't realize that you had such a long journalism background. Is that what you studied at Georgia State?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, journalism and English, because apparently in the middle, and I graduated in the middle of the recession, which was a super fun time.
Perfect.
I know, right? But it works out. You find out ways to like really diversify yourself and your brand. And I think overall, like if you're studying journalism or marketing or business, like it doesn't always have to look the same. There's a lot of ways to be a writer, a business person, a marketing person, because everybody needs those things, right? I think it's more about being passionate about the industry that you're in, which for me, tech is one of those industries. I love it here.
Awesome, thank you. And Annie, what about you?
I was just going to say, when Muriel joined the team, I was jealous that she was going to the tech team because I really wanted her writing skills on my team, but here we are.
She still borrows me. She still borrows me.
Sometimes I do. So I studied English at Oglethorpe, and I chose Oglethorpe because I love the non-traditional vibes. I was actually homeschooled all the way through college, so I never really got on board with the whole like traditional education in any form or fashion. I did end up in grad school at Georgetown later, which is probably the most traditional, you could go, but I love that as well. I studied English there, and actually ended up doing capstone project on the teaching of writing. I've always been interested in writing, always been a writer by trade. So my biggest kind of like coming into this role, the biggest thing I had to offer was this background in writing, like being a really excellent communicator in that way, combined with I had had a job for 4 years in the event industry and was managing all the logistics for an event band and had been a part of like over 500 weddings at that point in time, corporate events, all that stuff. And so I just had this like massive exposure to what it means to be a brand and manage the experience of a brand through that, because I was really the only touch point those clients ever had. And then this like love for communication and writing. So when they were looking for what they called, I think I was at the time donor experience manager, associate, I don't remember, brand experience associate, something like that. They were like, well, we need someone who can communicate with our donors and make them love News Story, but we also need someone who can kind of just like manage this like experience of being a donor. Like, what does it mean to be a donor at News Story? Because really there was like not a lot built around that, not a lot of architecture at that point in time. And so I sold it to them. I think half of getting a job is just really wanting it sometimes, because I really almost begged for the role at News Story. I sat across from Allie, who's one of our co-founders, and she was describing to me, you'll get to write courses for people who are building homes in another country to learn how to do it well and all this stuff. And I had been a freelance writer also as part of my job. And so I was like, really trying to sell her on how I had the perfect experience for that. And then at the end of it, I was like, regardless of whether I'm the right person, Allie, I really want this job. This is my dream job. I think I literally said like those words to her. And she cites that as like one of the big reasons she hired me, is because I just like basically convinced her that I was the person who wanted it the most. I say that to say, I'm not sure that I actually was the most qualified, and I'm not sure what it would even mean to be the most qualified to be a brand director of a tech startup nonprofit. I think what makes me good at my job is like, I still have that tenacious love for News Story, and I still really am like excited about building this brand. And I'm also a really good proofreader. That'll get you far in life.
So true. So true.
I think mine was also, I don't know anybody whose journey in their job wasn't a little bit backwards at this point in time. So I think Muriel and I both have that going on.
Yeah, and I also pointing out, like Annie saying that, we're always learning. That's definitely one of our values, like improve through learning. We're all just kind of like, I don't want to say tumble through this, but we're always like just striving for that excellence. And that may look like not super great sometimes, but we learn and we keep going, which, it's also a big part of our donor experience program.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of department changes as you guys grow bigger. How has the pandemic affected your jobs? I'm just curious if it was a major change, if it wasn't a change at all. I'm very curious.
Ooh, that's a big question.
It took away all the things that I love, Nicole. All of my favorite things left with this stupid pandemic. No, I mean, we lost all of our events was the biggest thing. We were about to hire an event planner at the beginning of this year, and then we didn't because we don't do events anymore like everyone else in the world. Mm-hmm. That's a huge part of what I love and what I get to do. It's changed a lot of our strategies around fundraising. It's changed, we're doing a virtual fundraiser this year instead of a gala in person, which who on earth knows how to do a successful virtual fundraiser where you raise $1 million? I don't know how to do that. So there's a lot of just like for everyone, I think in the world, there's a lot of pivoting, a lot of learning. But for us in the brand department, it's been, okay, how do we, if our projects internationally are stopped because of COVID, how do we still funnel money to places that it's needed? And how do we create a brand experience that is good for people in a time when they're being overrun with like emotional content on the internet all the time? All those things have been challenges that we faced this year, in addition to no events, in addition to no hires. Now we're short-staffed. It just has been for us, and I think for everyone, challenge after challenge, to kind of be agile and pivot and become effective during a time that it's really easy to be ineffective. So we started a new donor experience program this year. It's a monthly recurring giving program, which is a lower price point than any of our other giving had been in the past. So people could give basically $10 a month and still make an impact. We're doing virtual events. We didn't hire as many people as I wanted to. Lots of different things.
Yep. Same over here at the university. But yeah,
Yeah.
what about Muriel, how's it affected you?
I think like how Annie said, we've definitely become more agile in the way that we approach things. When we launched the neighborhood, which is the monthly program that she's mentioning, we sort of launched our rent relief program here in Atlanta and in San Francisco to pay 3 months of rent for some families, sort of like the first program under the neighborhood. And that was crazy, but it was also great because we were able to be just like crazy with the changes and everything and just learn a ton because we used our data collection tool to get the information from those families and qualify them. And we were able to do that like with partners. We had like 5 partners total, and clearly they were across the country. And from intake to qualification, we were able to do it in less than 30 minutes. And that's crazy. But it just made us like, even though we are short-staffed and we're just kind of pushing through, like we're still making that impact in those families' lives. So we ended up helping about 3+ families, 300+ families in Atlanta and San Francisco combined, and we paid their rent for 3 months, which was really exciting. And yeah, we just been kind of like working more in the US, which is not our initial focus. Normally we work internationally, so a lot of our customers abroad, of course, have pressed pause. So instead we're looking into local customers that are using Felix. We have a couple here in Georgia that are using Felix, which is super exciting to help with financial support, especially with those families and then need rental assistance because of COVID.
That's a really interesting shift that you guys have focused on domestic cities because of the pandemic, and that these families actually benefit from that. That's, I think. So what do you think then, if the pandemic goes away soon, hopefully, like what is your hope that News Story looks like? Like, are you guys do you think it'll be back to normal? Like, are you gonna be hiring the same positions that you needed before? Do you think you'll I ask because I wonder if this pandemic has changed your outlook as a company moving forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everyone in the world is trying to figure that out, right? Like we all have probably changed our outlooks to some extent. Just even knowing something like this is possible changes your outlook forever, because you a year ago probably would have said the worst thing that could happen in 2020 is something completely different from this. So I think it has changed our outlook. I think what practically will happen, I mean, we've already lifted our hiring freeze and we've started to hire again. So we're in a great place as a company right now. I think we will continue for the foreseeable future, regardless of the pandemic. The economic world right now is still shaken by what's been going on. So continuing to ensure that we have a long runway so that we don't have to lay off our current staff is like number one priority, and that we can continue our core operations. We won't change our mission. That's not going to change. It's really just a question of how soon can we grow at the rate that we thought we were going to be growing this year. We still have ambitious goals for next year financially and in terms of fundraising. And like I said, already lifted our hiring freeze. So I think we're in a really good position. And I think we are lucky to be under amazing leadership that just, it's like they were prepared for it without knowing that it could ever happen. They're just very conservative in that way. So we thankfully have not had to have any major organizational structural changes because of that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of, job opportunities for these students who are pursuing the nonprofit career path, since you guys have worked there from like 1 to 3 years, what are some qualifications or qualities that you guys look for in teammates?
Do you want to lead that, Muriel?
Oof. I don't know. You're the one that was like a super awesome interviewer. And he interviewed me when I came. I think like a big thing that we do, I mean, I feel like everyone in our team is like extremely type A. And in like so many ways, like we're all just pushing each other to just be better and just think outside the box. Especially this year, like I know like part of the team sort of like thinking about the revenue streams that we could like sustain, for a company. Like Founders Lab came up, like how do we put all this knowledge that we have and all these connections into one thing? And we came up with this 1-month accelerator, which is now in cohort 2, when others, network and founders come on to say the things that they've learned, through their startups, through their leadership, things like that. And I think like that's a big part of it. Like we are always just kind of like, okay, we're doing this thing really well. What else can we do? Because I think that's what's gonna like really expand our solutions with just everything that's happening and our mission to end homelessness. We just have to think outside the box.
Yeah, we definitely have an abundance of that on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're looking for a concrete, what do I need to be to work at News Story, which I was when I was in my interview process, you can go to our culture page or our careers page and find our values. We have 6 values. We are not one of those companies that just has them on the website and never talks about them. We're one of those crazy companies that literally talks about them all the time, and anybody could spout off all 6 of them and refer to, 10 actions that they did that day where they evidenced any of those values. They're very, very real in our culture. So I would say to a lot of companies, culture means you have a ping pong table. To our company, culture means you operate like a founder. You know what excellence means. You operate in excellence with humility. You're constantly trying to learn. You're constantly trying to simplify. There are these values that we use to sort of define both what it means to work here and, by that same token, what it means to get a job here. So when we're interviewing, we're always looking for those qualities. And the 2 that I think we look for the most that tend to thrive here at News Story are a team of founders, which means you have an extreme ownership mindset. You take responsibility for things as though you were the owner of the company. And humble pursuit of excellence, which is exactly what it sounds like. So you're never satisfied with your work. You're always trying to pursue more, but you're doing that humbly, never looking for the spotlight, always looking to just become better. So those are the things that make a good interviewee and a good interviewer, in my opinion.
No, this is really great. And I feel like a lot of Oglethorpe students identify with these traits as well. So I hope that, as they pursue the nonprofit path, that they'll, grow these characteristics even more. But yeah, speaking of founders, I know you guys have a new program called Founders Lab. Could you guys share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Muriel just mentioned it a second ago. The basic concept is when we started out as a company, I say I wasn't here then, but at the beginning of New Story, there were 3 co-founders. They were all like 24, so probably not that much older than anybody listening to this call or the same age as. And they had a big idea, but they had no way to carry it out and very little connections and no money. So they were trying to figure out how to essentially solve homelessness with that as their starting point. Not a fancy network, not a fancy resume. And they got to where they are now, which combined, I think the number is over 50 million that we've raised in revenue. We, have built communities, over 20 communities around the world. 11,000 plus people have been housed, and we've been named Fast Company's most innovative company list 3 times in a row. How do you get there from where we were and the company's only 6 years old? That's pretty unbelievable, by any accounts. So essentially Founders Lab is them giving away the things that they've learned along the way and bringing in the network that they've developed along the way to help. So learning from people like Scott Harrison, the founder of Charity Water, who has been a huge mentor for us, and listening to him talk about how he's built Charity Water and what it took to do that. Listening to our co-founders talk about what it means to have a founder's mindset. Really, the whole premise of Founders Lab is that anybody can do any of the things that we just described if you have a founder's mindset. And it's based on that same concept that I was just talking about, which is a team of founders as a value. So it is a monthly subscription now. So we originally started with it at like a pretty high price point where you could buy entrance to a class and take that class. We realized that the need was really high and the price point was a barrier for a lot of the people who wanted to be a part of it. And so now it's $50 a month, and it's essentially you get a subscription to this content on a regular basis. So there are live webinars that you get to join with people like Scott Harrison. There are evergreen content that's kind of captured ahead of time that you get to participate in. You get to be part of a cohort, so people who are talking about this stuff, Slack messages, Zoom calls. It's essentially like you get to be sort of like a auxiliary arm to News Story, like being a part of our culture without actually working here. And it's a great way to learn a lot about how we think if you're interested in working at News Story, or if you want to start your own venture someday, or if you just want to learn the mindset. So
yeah, and a lot of us actually jump in there and like mentor groups and things like that. Last cohort, they had, all of the teams had different presentations of like their product that they thought of. And they needed to think about the challenges of growing that product. How do you scale it? What's your business model? So even though they may or may not take it live, you're still learning like the infrastructure of that thinking. My team won because I was a mentor. It was great. But so it's really exciting because the News Story team does jump on the Slack and you can ask us questions and things like that. Aside from, of course, the super valuable network that I totally wish I had when I was in school. Like there's like so much that they teach you beyond just business, like self-care as a founder, which I think like when you're starting out, you think that like you just have to go, but you get burned out pretty quickly. So I think like there's like knowing how to like set boundaries and things like that, how these founders learn those lessons so you don't have to, and things like that. It's super interesting.
No, that's so great that you guys are making this insider information available to other people. I think that's wonderful. So we're coming up towards the end of our webinar, and I just think that, you know, News Story is just such an admirable organization. The reason why we wanted to have you guys is that you are a team of just such driven people. And I know that we have a lot of Oglethorpe students that feel that way as well. And I feel like you guys work so well together towards one mission. So thank you for chatting with us. But to close it up, do you guys have any particular advice for our college students who may want to pursue a career in a field of nonprofit world?
I think a lot of times, like I mentioned before, the way that they teach us in college, like you're kind of going after this major and like there's only these places that you can work at. I think thinking outside of that, it's so important, because you'll find like nonprofit world has all kinds of nonprofits. Like you don't have to work at a, you know, like we're a housing nonprofit, but there's like other kinds. So just thinking about like what drives you, because every day, like, of course we hit blockers and things like that, but we're super passionate about what we do, because we really identify with our mission. So I think that's so important. And just like thinking about the skills that you can bring to that organization. Like you don't have to have like the exact things that like say in the job description. If you have those skills in like an informal way, and you can show that during the interview, that's super valuable. Again, like I was a journalist. My husband is a programmer, and that is like and I worked in a tech publication. That's as much exposure to tech that I've had. So know that like you can like push yourself to show your other skills in other ways.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. Anything you wanted to add, Annie?
Just make decisions that are not fear-based. The better decisions you ever make in your life will be ones that you did not make out of fear. So don't worry, you will eventually make money, but that's not the number one thing that matters in life. So
It's true.
Take the decision that feels right in your gut, and it probably is the right one. And if it's not, you'll know within like a month, and you can always quit. So it's okay.
So true. So true. Wow.
No, that's really great advice. I feel like a lot of, you know, college students, there's a lot of anxiety, you know, especially as they go closer towards graduation, and in this time of a pandemic, you know, it's a lot of fear. So yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you both for your time.